Good morning. Welcome to week 1, day 1 of Adobe Flash Professional. To find Adobe Flash, I'm going to go to my Start menu. I'm going to go to my Adobe Master Collection CS6, and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to find Adobe Flash Professional CS6. Once you've found that, go ahead and click to open this file or to open the program. And our assignment today is we're going to try and create 5 moving objects on our document. We want each of these documents to be, or we want each of these objects to be something different, something creative. And again, we'll start simple and we can build up from there. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to recognize this is my stage. Right? I'm going to do all of my drawing on or around here, and eventually everything will be that's visible will only be on this stage. I also want to notice this down here. It says 24.00 FPS, which is our frame rate, and it's the frames per second. So as part of this first assignment, we're going to have a 4-second animation, which means it needs to last exactly 96. It needs to go exactly 96 frames, which is right here. This is our timeline. This is going to tell us what our objects do at each frame during our animation, and technically at each second during our animation. Let's go ahead and get started. We're familiar with some of these tools, so I'm going to use this toolbar, right? I've got my selection tool, I've got my free transform tool, and I've got my rectangle tool. These are some of the most common things that we're going to be using today, along with our stroke and fill colors. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to switch it to my oval tool. Remember, to do that, all I have to do is click, hold down, and select my oval tool. I'm then going to go over here on my screen, and it doesn't matter where, and I'm going to draw my first object. I'm just going to draw a dot. And with that dot drawn, I can change my color, and I can change my stroke. To do that, I'm going to highlight it. I'll choose a color I like, maybe bright pink, and I'll choose a stroke color. And again, you have options, but let's go ahead and make it this kind of turquoise blue. I can also change my stroke style so that it's something maybe a little bit more creative or unique to me. And if I like this dotted style, I could increase the size of that. And very simply, I've now created a dot with a bunch of little dots around it. Once I'm content with that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my keyframe at keyframe 1. You'll notice that's going to highlight everything that's on this dot, or everything that I've drawn on this layer. You want to be careful because sometimes we'll make a little mistake or we'll draw something else over here. Let's say I had like something that I had just drawn really small, and I didn't think it was going to be a problem. You'll see when I click on keyframe 1, it actually highlights that, and that's going to create a problem for me in the future. So I want to make sure that I've gotten rid of anything that I don't want on that layer, so that when I do select everything, it's all highlighted. Now that it is selected, I'm going to go up to my top and I'm going to convert this to a symbol. What that means is that it's not going to fall apart. Right now, look what would happen if I went over here and I grabbed something. Look at it. My fill color separates from my stroke color. I want all of this to be combined. So again, I click on my keyframe 1, everything is selected, I go to modify and I convert to symbol. I'm going to call this my pink dot. And I'm going to select OK. And you can see now my pink dot has a blue square around it. What that means is that everywhere I pull this, everything's going to stay connected. It's a symbol. And the first thing I'm going to do with this symbol is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place it right here at the top left-hand corner of my screen. Now let's go ahead and let's move our dot. remember that it can't do anything that we don't tell it to do. And so with the idea that we want this to last exactly 4 seconds or 96 frames, I'm going to take 96 frames and I'm going to divide it. I know that 96 can be divided by 2, it could be divided by 4, it could be divided by 6, 8, 12, 16, 24. And so I've got different options because each of my 5 objects that I'm going to create, this first layer is my pink dot layer, they need to go exactly 96 seconds. So let's start with this one. And let's have it bounce at a frame rate of every 12 frames. So I'm going to, at 12, I'm going to insert a keyframe. And I'm going to tell my dot that at keyframe 12, I want you to be down here. And you can see there's like some dotted lines along each edge of my document, and that tells you where the border is. Right, so now that it's at that border of that side, I'm going to go ahead and unclick. And you can see that at keyframe 1, it's in the top left corner, but at keyframe 12, it's in the bottom right corner. At keyframe 24, I'm going to insert a keyframe, and I'm going to move this dot back up to the top. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue with that. The next multiple of 12 would be at 36. I'll insert a keyframe, and I'll move my dot. And at 46, at 48, I'm going to go ahead and insert a keyframe and move my dot up to the top left. I have to do that a few more times. So again, it inserts keyframe at 60. My dot's down in the bottom right-hand corner. Notice I'm just going for a consistent bouncing motion so that my dot is going to bounce from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. You'll see it's all going to fall into place eventually. At 72, insert a keyframe, move it up to the top. 84, insert a keyframe, move it down to the bottom. And at 96, I'm going to insert a keyframe and move it right back up to the top where it started. I like for my dots to begin and end right in the same place. That way, if I decide that my animation is just going to continue to play over and over and over again, it'll actually look like it's a continuous motion, not just 4 seconds, but rather 8 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, or longer. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. If I hit enter on my keyboard, it'll show you what happens at each keyframe. Notice it's moving back and forth and back and forth. If I wanted to, I could go to Control, Test Scene, and it'll pop out in a separate screen. What I don't like about this, though, is that we don't see any sort of motion in our animation. So to add a motion, in between each of these keyframes, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say Create a Classic Tween. And you can see what happens. Now my dot moves from point A to point B. If I insert a classic tween or create a classic tween in each of these circumstances, now my dot moves seamlessly from the top left corner to the bottom right corner over and over and over again. Here it is again. Now notice it only switches location wherever I've told it to. So let's go ahead and let's try and create another dot or another object actually. Notice that I've created a second layer. You must have your work on a new layer now. I'm going to go over here to my oval tool and I'm going to change it to a rectangle tool. Or I could change it to a polystar tool or whatever else I would like. To keep it simple, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to make it a rectangle. I'm going to change my color to purple, my fill color to purple, my stroke color to green. I'm going to change my stroke size to 4. And again, you can play with any of this. And my style to solid. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to it doesn't matter where I place this or where I draw it. I could have a square, I could have a rectangle. Let's have a square for now. Okay, and once I'm happy with what I've drawn, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select it. Grab my selection tool. Select the keyframe, modify, convert to symbol. And let's call this one purple rectangle. You might be asking like yourself, why does it even matter what we name this? In our library, it's going to keep track of all of our symbols so that you could use them at any time. For an assignment like this, it might not seem very necessary, but would you want to draw 100 flowers over and over again, or would you rather just go to your library and find your pink flower and be able to drag it in over and over again? So I've got my purple rectangle, and I've converted it to a symbol. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place it right over here on the left side, the left edge of my screen. Now for this one, I'm going to have it bounce every 24 frames. So only 4 times. And remember, I want it to start and end in the same place. So I need to be a little creative about where it's going to go and how it's going to get back to where I want it to start. Let's actually start this one by creating a keyframe at 96. That way I know that at keyframe 1 and at keyframe 96, it's in the same place. And let's actually do this. At keyframe 48, I want this purple rectangle to go straight across my screen to the other side. Not higher, not lower, just straight across. Wherever I leave it, that's where it will be at keyframe 48. But notice I'm going to move it all the way across until it's touching this side. That leaves me 2 more keyframes. 24. I'm going to insert a keyframe. And at 24, I just want my purple rectangle to come right up here to the top of the screen, right here in the center. So now I've got it at keyframe 1, it's here. Keyframe 24, it's here. Keyframe 48, it's here. So where do you think I'm going to want it at 72? I just inserted a keyframe, and I'm going to move it here. And so here's what we've got. Now all I have to do is create a classic tween. Between each of my objects. And now I've got something like this. I'm going to name this layer purple square. And if I wanted to, if I don't like the fact that right about here, that pink dot goes behind my purple square, I can easily just drag that layer down, and now my purple square will be below it. If I want to test my movie, I can just go to Control Test Scene, and here's what it's going to look like when I export it to YouTube. And you can see it's just continuously moving. Again, this is why I like my objects in a assignment like this to start and end in the same place. There's no glitching. Let's create another layer. On this one, let's have a little bit more fun. We'll make a smiley face. To do that, I'm going to grab my oval tool again. And for this, go back to my properties. I'd probably want a bright yellow. Let's put this yellow. And my stroke tool, I'm going to have be black. And let's just change this to 6. And again, it doesn't matter where I draw it, just make sure it's on the smiley face layer. If you're happy with your other layers, you can always lock them. You can even make them invisible if you want. So I'm going to draw a smiley face. Okay, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to change my fill color to white now. And I might actually just, sometimes it's easier, I'll just draw right here, highlight that, and copy it, paste it, Control C, Control V. There we go. Line tool. Just draw my line right here. Remember, I can grab my selection tool, go over that line, pull it down, and maybe just for fun, change my stroke height to 1 and change my fill color to blue. Give this guy some and I actually think that looks weird, so let's just get rid of that. I don't like it. Okay, I'm just gonna keep them simple, just like that. So there's my smiley face, right? And remember, before I animate it, I'm gonna select keyframe at keyframe 1, modify, convert to a symbol, and we'll call this one smiley face and hit OK. So for this guy, let's go ahead and have him start my bottom right corner. And maybe before we move him, he might just be a little bit big for me. So I'm going to just shrink him down a little bit, grab my selection tool again. Now, you might see this like little dot that appeared here. Don't touch that dot right now. That's going to be the rotation point. And so we don't want to play with that. We don't want it anywhere else besides where it is. We'll use it in the future, but for right now, we're just going to ignore it. So now we need to make this guy move. So far, we've done one object at 12 frames per second, one object bouncing at 24 frames, every 24 frames. So let's go ahead and have this guy bounce at every 16 frames. That means that he's going to bounce 6 times. So again, we want to be really creative. With where he bounces. And I think I have a plan. So the first keyframe I'm going to insert, let's just go ahead and stick with what we did last time. Let's insert a keyframe at 96. That means that this is where he's going to start and this is where he's going to end. Okay? And at 16, we're going to insert a keyframe. And we're going to have him move right up here. And at 32, right, because 16 plus 16, insert a keyframe at 32, we're going to have him move right down here. And at 48, we're going to insert a keyframe. He's going to move up here. And at 64, we're going to insert a keyframe. He's going to bounce back down here. We got one more. At 80, insert a keyframe. Bounce up here. And just for the sake of checking, see, he moved over a little bit, so let's just have him go right there. Shouldn't be very noticeable. So he starts and ends in the same place, right? And he bounces up and down a couple times on the way. Let's have a little bit more fun with him before we're done. Let's say he starts off here, he's facing up, but let's say up here, I'm going to grab my free transform tool, and I'm going to have him rotate upside down. And maybe I want him to be face side up here, but then I'm going to have him be upside down again. And then we'll have him be right side up, and then we'll have him be upside down. Notice I'm just telling it a new command at each of these keyframes. I'm telling it where I want it to be and what position I want it to be in this case, upside down. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a classic tween. And now I can go ahead and test my animation. Look good? All right, once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go on to my next layer. And just for safety, I might lock my smiley face. And for layer 4, I'm going to just call this one my black hole. And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it bounce actually every 48 keyframes. So that means it's only going to bounce 2 times. But watch what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to grab this circle, my oval tool. I'm going to have no stroke color this time. So I'm going to choose no stroke color. I'm going to have my fill color be black. And what I want to do is I want to create a circle that spans the whole, as much of the stage as possible. So there it is. And I'll take this, highlight everything on the stage, but I haven't converted it to a symbol yet. I'm going to try and center it as best as possible. Okay. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. I'm going to call it Black Hole. Hit OK. And once again, I want it to be exactly the same at the beginning and the end. So I'm going to insert a keyframe at 96. And at 48, I'm going to insert a keyframe. I'm going to grab my free transform tool. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm just going to make it as small as possible. There it is. And so what I've done now is I've made it so that I've got a large circle and a small circle, what I'm calling my black hole. I'm going to create a classic tween between one and the next. And here we go. It's getting a little bit more complex. Now what I don't like about that is that this black hole actually blocks my smiley face at a little point. So I'm going to move this down to the bottom. Now everything's showing up on top of it. We have one more to do. I'm going to insert a layer. I'm going to put this one all the way at the top. And you could draw like anything you want. So you could even use the line tool. And maybe you want to you could create like a little trapezoid. You could create like a little Frosty the Snowman, a sleigh, whatever you want. So have a little bit of fun with it. Then you can color it in. Actually, kind of liking this. Just gonna. You can see I'm having a little bit of trouble highlighting that middle part, so I'm just gonna increase the size. And then I can shrink it back down. Control C, Control V, and then watch this. I can pull this over here. I'm gonna use my free transform tool. Should be something like that. Oops. Careful. And then I'm just gonna place that right onto my document. Trying to have them line up. There we go. That's good. Got the idea. So now I'm going to take this object, right? I can actually click right here on the keyframe. You can see it's highlighted. I'm going to say modify, convert to symbol, and let's just call this a missile. And maybe for this one, let's go ahead and have it, I'm going to rotate it to start. I'm going to shrink it down really small. And we'll have it take off from the bottom of our screen. Okay. And so this one I'm going to have move every 6 frames. So the most important thing is that it's going to come back here at the end. So let's go ahead and let's insert a keyframe. Oops, sorry. Let's insert a keyframe at 96. That's where it's going to end up. And I'm just going to go ahead and at 6, insert a keyframe. I'm going to have it go right here. But it's going to look better if I rotate it a little bit and give it a little bit of excitement. So, rotate it to go that way. And then at 12, I'll insert a keyframe. And I'll move it all the way across here. So it will speed up a little bit, right? Because it's got a longer distance to travel. I might just have it go like here. And then at 18, insert a keyframe. Or you can do that. 24. Insert a keyframe. Put it right up here at the top. I'll rotate it. It's going to look a little funny. But again, the idea here is just to get an idea of how do we move, rotate objects, convert them to symbols, and so on. Insert a keyframe. Put it down here in the corner, and let's rotate it again. $36. So again, you can see this is a bit of a tedious process. And definitely a little time consuming because you want to make sure $48, $54. And one thing that's important to recognize is that because it's moving at such like a much faster frame rate, it's only taking 6 frames per second to get back and forth, get to each new spot. It's going to move fast, right? So again, this should be fun to see what the final product looks like. 66, 72. Almost there. 78. 84. So at 84, I want to move him like up here. 90. And 96. So now, the moment of truth. Create a classic tween between each of these. And we'll get a sneak peek at what this is going to look like. So again, we got to click in between each keyframe that we've created. Create a classic tween. And control, testing. Whoa, look at that thing go. So I've now created something with 5 different objects bouncing at 5 different rates of speed. And that's my final product. So what do we do next? We're going to file, save, and we're going to save this somewhere safe, and I'm going to call it my bouncing objects assignment. Personally, if I were you, since we share computers, Ruben, Chris, period, bouncing objects. I'm going to hit save. Then I'm going to go to File, I'm going to export, and it is a movie. So I'm going to export movie, and I'm going to export it as a QuickTime movie because it's easy to upload to YouTube. I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to just hit export because I'm content with each of those settings. And it tells you that it's complete. So I hit OK. And I'll minimize this page. I'm now going to go to the internet. I'm going to go to YouTube. And I'm going to go to upload. And when I go to upload, it's going to just say select files to upload. And I can make this very easy on myself. I can just go to my desktop. And here it is. This is the .mov file. I just drag it here and drop it into YouTube. You're going to get two links, right? So first of all, here's the link that your video will be live at. You'll right click this, copy your link address, and you'll put that link in Google Classroom. Once you've published your video, in addition to this link that you have that you can copy and place in Google Classroom, you're also going to want to grab this embed code. What the embed code is going to do is you can copy it. You can go to your blog. And at the very top of your blog, you can click on HTML and you can just hit paste. Go back to compose and your video will be included in here. And it will play directly in your blog. I still would encourage you, or actually request, that you format it nicely. So center that image and so on and so forth. And then you can put the response to these questions at the bottom. Okay? Congratulations. You finished your first video or your first Flash animation. You posted it hopefully successfully both in Google Classroom, on YouTube, and on your blog. Thanks.